So a few of the key provisions of the law, right, that I think are particularly close to my heart, and I think particularly important to the LGBTQ community, is the voluntary acknowledgement of parentage that Anna talked about. So what that is that it's a simple form that the federal government requires every state to have, and it's usually signed by a genetic father, to establish parentage at birth. To say voluntarily, I'm taking this responsibility at birth. It's signed one form. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to pay any money. And it is the equivalent of a court decree of parentage. So it's a very important protection that people can sign to establish their parentage at birth. So now with the Rhode Island Uniform Parentage Act, there's expanded access to that path to parentage. So people who are presumed parents, so that includes marital parents, people who have children through assisted reproductive technology, they can sign, in addition to alleged genetic parents, sign that VAP form to be established as a legal parent. So that's, I think, one of my favorite parts, right? And I'm going to be talking about VAPs forever, the most boring form in the world, so powerful, so important to sign, to take, and also a very weighty document, right? You only sign that document if you are truly a parent and you are ready to take on those responsibilities of parentage, because once you're past 60 days, you cannot rescind it, you cannot get out of it. It is a very important legal document. But that's one of, I think, a really important expansion to Rhode Island law, a very important access to justice issue for folks. The bill also clarifies that for the first time in Rhode Island law, that a gamete donor is not a parent. So if you're using a sperm donor, an egg donor, an embryo donation, those folks are not parents, which gives protection to the donors, right? That they don't have those rights and responsibilities, and to the parents or parent that you are the parent, right? And that parent by intent, by conduct, by choice, not because of just a default into a biological relationship. So I think that's a really important aspect to the law that can bring some greater peace and stability for those families. The Parentage Act has a really clear statement of non-discrimination, right? Rhode Island law does not discriminate based on marital status, gender of parents, or the circumstances of your birth, which I think is a really powerful statement of public policy. Obviously, the Rhode Island Parentage Act establishes really clear protections and guidelines if you're building your parentage through surrogacy. And also another provision is there's really now statutes about how to protect your children if you're born through assisted reproduction, right? So if you consent to assisted reproduction with the intent to be a parent, you are a parent of your child. And you can show that consent through signing a legal document such as a VAP, or you can also have access to the courts to get a court decree of parentage, which is a different route to court than through the adoption codes. So you don't need to do a home study. You don't need to do an extensive criminal record check. There are fewer barriers to getting that court decree of parentage that's going to be recognized in every jurisdiction. So those are just a few highlights. Obviously, there's 10 substantive articles, 50 pages. There's a lot going on in this law, but I think that those are just some of the things I want to highlight. And also highlight that there is an FAQ about all of the different ways to be a parent on the GLAAD website, which I'm sure someone will probably put in the chat, which actually reminds me of one provision I did not discuss, which actually was already in Rhode Island law, which was de facto parentage. That if you can establish your de facto parentage of your child, which is essentially through your conduct, through your substantial caretaking of a child, through a number of a significant period of time. If you meet the factors of that test, you can also be established as a legal parent. But again, that's been a protection actually in Rhode Island since 2000, but this statute codifies that case and that protection. So those are just a few highlights that I wanted people to know about.